Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this online meeting of the Planning Committee on Thursday, the 4th of February 2021. I am the Chairman, Councillor Cyril Liddy. This meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom over the internet on the Council's YouTube channel and will be available to watch afterwards. To begin the meeting, there are a few matters of housekeeping. With the exception of the Democratic Services officers advising us, would all participants please mute their microphones unless invited to speak. At the start of the meeting, I will announce by name and invite to speak those participants wishing to make representations to committee members. I will ask for the application to be presented by the planning case officer, during which time a visual presentation will be shared. I will ask members of the committee in turn if they wish to ask a question or comment. At the end of each item of business, the Democratic Services Officer will ask each committee member in turn to confirm audibly how they wish to vote, and the outcome of the vote will be confirmed by the DSO. Subject to progress, I may adjourn the meeting at 8 p.m. for a short break. This is a quasi-judicial committee which makes its decisions based on material planning considerations, following the laws of the land and the policies of the council. If the committee is minded to refuse an application, members will use such considerations and evidence that will stand up in a court of law. The material planning considerations are listed on the council's agenda. Now, I will ask each committee member in turn to introduce themselves. I won't ask you if you understand the procedure. I think it's all second nature to you by now. Councillor Barton, please.
Councillor Lynn Barton, Shrub End Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chua, please.
Councillor Chua, Councillor for St Anne's and St John's Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazel, please.
Councillor Pauline Hazel, Shrub End Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, please.
Councillor Brian Jarvis, Lexton and Braithwaite Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Loveland, please.
Councillor Derek Loveland from Tiptree Ward.
Thank you. Councillor McLean, please.
Councillor Jackie McLean from Marksdale Lair Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Oxford, please.
Gerard Oxford, Highwoods Ward, substituting for Philip Oxford. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warnes, please.
Martin Warnes, representing Beerchurch Ward.
Thank you. Substitutes, the only one has already been mentioned, Councillor Gerard Oxford on behalf of Councillor Philip Oxford. There are no urgent items scheduled for this meeting. Are there any declarations of interest to be disclosed? Disclosable pecuniary, other pecuniary or non-pecuniary? No? Good. Have your say. For each item, I will announce speakers by name in turn. Those in opposition will be heard first, followed by those in support, who will each be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Then the visiting councillor will be allowed to speak for up to 5 minutes. The DSO will announce when the time has elapsed, and speakers will be required to stop at that point. Once all representations are made, I will ask the visiting speakers to leave the meeting. The remainder of the meeting will be available to view on the council's YouTube channel. Now, as speakers, I have public against Mr. Kevin Hicks, public for Mr. Robert Pomeroy, and visiting councillors, Councillor Patricia Moore. Mr. Hicks, please, would you care to address the committee?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, including the original submission, the applicant illegally and fraudulently signed declarations stating there are no trees within falling distance of the proposal. This was untrue. In a desperate attempt now to appear compliant, having denied their existence for 3 years, he now claims that if requested, he will remove them, but they're not his trees to remove. Claiming that the single and 2-storey extensions are on an existing hardstanding is again untrue. The original base was only a garage. The foundations required approximately 150 tonnes of clay to be removed before replacing it with concrete. Essentially, this is a dam preventing the natural flow of ground and surface water. It's claimed that a flood survey was not required. Again, untrue. This area is officially rated as a high-risk surface water flood zone. Many reasons may exist for increases in surface water, but we submit that the foundations may be one. It shows complete negligence that a builder with 30 years experience who claims on his van that the preservation of our environment is fundamental did not research, commission a survey or mitigate against potential flooding issues. In the previous application, an appeals officer rejected any increase in size as it would affect the character of the street and appear over-dominant, yet showing complete contempt for planners, this decision was arrogantly ignored. In fact, not only was it built larger than approved, but with the windows and doors located as per the refused plan. A huge overhang was also added to the balcony, increasing the footprint even more. He has essentially built the refused application. It's claimed a reason for refusal previously was a metal staircase adding to the footprint. Once again, this is untrue. Refusal for the staircase was one of aesthetics and privacy, not a footprint. It's stated there are balconies added to properties. Using added in this way tricks the committee into thinking that the balconies in Shears Crescent are extensions when they are not. Without exception, not one increases the footprint or is forward of the original building line, and all are built over existing garages. Even if you trust the applicant's measurements, which differ from those taken by planning officials, to draw a comparison with the largest existing balcony at 15 square metres and the applicant's, which is nearly double at 27 square metres, is absurd. Approval would undermine all previous decisions. Mersey Town Council, who know the area well, have recommended refusal and deemed it as far too large for the plot, out of character for the whole street, and would destroy a neighbour's aspect. Put simply, from the beginning, the applicant has provided false, misleading information and, most importantly, ignored any decisions. The applicant's report is full of untruths and misdirection. The current stage of build is irrelevant. It was the applicant's own choice to build off plan. It changes nothing from the council's original appraisal, and we can see no merit in granting permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Pomeroy, please. Again, you have 3 minutes. Could you unmute yourself? It would be helpful. We'll start the 3 minutes now, to be fair to you, all right?
It is important that members understand the events that have led us all to this committee. In short, permission was granted for extensions in 2017. The applicant then made the application to increase the size of part of the approved scheme, which was refused. He appealed and the appeal was dismissed. Following the appeal, work began to build the approved scheme, which had advanced, when a planning enforcement officer visited the site to assess what was being built. Measurements were taken and it was discovered that some parts of the extensions were slightly smaller than approved plans and some parts slightly larger. These discrepancies range from between 50 millimetres, 2 inches, and 200 millimetres, 7.8 inches. Ordinarily, this level of variation might be expected on a building project. It is unlikely that when built, development matches precisely the dimensions on a planning drawing. The applicant was asked by enforcement to submit a non-material amendment. This is a measure that's designed to regularise such minor changes to planning permissions. This he did, but officers considered the modest variation to be a material increase and insisted a planning application was made to regularise the small discrepancies. This application is before you tonight. To clarify the changes from the approval, a plan was submitted showing what had been approved, what had been built, and what had been dismissed at appeal. It is evident from this plan that what has been built is only slightly different to what was approved. Officers are now advising that these small differences are now not material and have no discernible impact on the street or on neighbouring outlook. It is not the case that the applicant has simply built the scheme the inspector dismissed. The differences between the appeal scheme and what has been built is significant and clearly illustrated on the plan submitted. The applicant accepts that one of the questions on the application form involving neighbouring trees was incorrectly answered. This has now been rectified. The extensions do not impact trees any more than the hard standing that was there in place previously. There is no professional evidence before you which demonstrates any harm to trees. The trees concerned are garden leylandii with no public amenity value, so are not material planning considerations of this application. The built extensions have not removed a soakaway from the site. The surface water drainage system on the site has not changed. The drainage that's been installed has been passed under the building regulations. There is no evidence before you that demonstrates that the works have led to an increase in flooding. The applicant has acted entirely properly throughout. He has done what the council has asked of him at every step. It is surprising.
Time, Chair.
It is surprising that an extension which is just 1 brick longer, 200 mil than it should be, has come before.
Mr. Pomry, if you could.
Sorry, it
Stop.
was 500 words, so I thought that would take 3 minutes.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor McLean, please. Councillor McLean, I do apologise. Councillor Moore.
Good evening. Thank you very much. The original permission for this property, number 172552, was granted in 2017. Unfortunately, there were inaccuracies in the application form. The existence of trees was denied, and there was no mention that the area is a surface water flood zone. As a result, no mitigating measures were required. Mersey Town Council objected on the grounds of loss of privacy, overbuilding and damage to the street scene. Application 191956, lodged in 2019, for a much larger build was refused by CBC and refused at appeal. The reasons for refusal being scale, of not being subservient to the existing building and being harmful to the existing dwelling. Also, the balcony would appear dominant within the street scene. The inspector noted that although there were other balconies, they relate well to the scale of the host properties and the spacing between the properties. They are, in fact, all built over existing garage footprints. It was deemed by the inspector that the development would be detrimental to the overall character of the dwelling and the area. Also, that the height of the privacy screening on the balcony would have an overbearing impact and be harmful to the living conditions of the neighbours. These reasons for refusal are vital for understanding why this retrospective application should not be approved. The inspector pointed out that it would be contrary to DP1 of the LDF and UR2 of the CBC course strategy. Now, moving on to the retrospective application 202692. What has been built so far is only 0.68 of a square metre less than the application that was refused at appeal. It is 18% larger than the 2017 permission. The balustrade, which is regrettable but essential for the privacy of neighbours, is consequently larger than ever and will be even more obtrusive to the entire crescent. There was an attempt to build even larger, but this has been partially removed. There is a concern that there is a condition that all doors and windows and frames should be white. This has only been partially met. This property sits on a site surface water flooding. See the Essex County Council surface water flooding map. It has been a catchment area for streams that drain into the boating lake that existed on this site. Amelioration would have been required in the 2017 permission if the application form had admitted this. As a result of what has been built over a natural soakaway, the applicant's garden and the neighbours have been suffering from unprecedented and considerable flooding. You may or may not be aware that apart from the flooding issue, the 2017 application failed to mention the presence of trees very close to the build site, not the property of not the ownership of the applicant. Several of these trees have been seriously damaged by construction by cutting away their roots. There exists only one parking space for this property. The so-called garage is too small for a modern car. So there is, in reality, been a loss of one parking space. This has resulted in the owner's vans being left out in the street, blocking the turning area provided for all the residents of Shears Crescent. Whether or not anything can be done to roll back the harm caused by the 2017 permission, it's vital that that permission should not be exceeded in any way. Only half a square metre less than that which was so comprehensively refused at appeal cannot be seen as a minimal discrepancy and this overbuild should not be condoned. It would cause all the harm predicted by the inspector. I'm also concerned that the north end of the balcony will give sight straight into the bedrooms of number 18. This is a bare 20 paces away. How many of you would relish having to keep your bedroom curtains shut night and day? To lose an appeal, then go ahead and build it anyway and expect to get away with it as an insult to the planning department, committee and the appeals process. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if I could ask the visiting speakers to leave the meeting, you may continue to view it on YouTube, please. Right, I think that's everyone out. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is, in fact, the minutes of the previous meeting of the 21st of January. Owen, I think we can approve those by simply a show of hands.
Yes,
Oh,
we can, Chair.
Hello.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, was that comment directed to me? I believe
Yes.
that should be fine. But Jan, is that okay?
Yes, it is. We've done that
Okay.
previously. That's
So
fine.
raise your hand if you approve the minutes. Brian, you weren't there, were you?
Approved. Thank
Approved,
you.
yes. Okay, Tar. Thank you. Right. Okay, we now move on to Eleanor's presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just start sharing my screen. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And if you could let me know that you can see the presentation, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fine,
great.
Eleanor.
Great, thank you. I've also got a laser pointer on the screen as well, so hopefully that will be visible too if I wiggle it now.
Yes, that's clear.
Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, thank you everyone and good evening. So as you know, this application relates to number 19 Shears Crescent in West Mersey. So I've got a block plan here and I'm using my laser pointer just to show where 19 Shears Crescent is located. The application is for a single-storey rear extension here, two-storey side extension here, single-storey front and side extension. To the north is number 18, shown here, and to the south is number 20. So as you'll be aware, there is a number of planning history which is relevant to this application and is discussed in the committee report. So in 2017, an application for householder extensions was approved at this site, and this plan shows those approvals. This document has been submitted to try and illustrate the actual increase. The red line has been put on here just to illustrate the proposed increase here. As you'll probably be aware, the single-storey front and side extension has already commenced, and this is shown to be larger than the approved plans. The single-storey rear and side extensions here have not commenced yet. So this next slide is the proposed elevations. You'll see the proposed screening here along the side and rear at 1.8 metres high to protect privacy. So the difference between the 2017 and the proposal before members tonight varies. So along here, the approximate increase is 40 centimetres, so 20 centimetres each side. Along here is around 15 centimetres, and then these other two are approximately 20 centimetres. Given this is a minor increase, although still material, is considered to be an acceptable impact on the street scene, and it's recommended that conditions are imposed in relation to screening to protect neighbouring amenity. So I'll just go through some site photos. So this first one is of number 19, and you'll see the front and side here, which you can see has already commenced. This photo is looking to the north, to where number 18 is, right here. This photo is looking towards the south, with the application site on the left and the single-storey element here on the left as well. So this photo is taken from further south in Shears Crescent, but pointing towards the north, with 18 here and number 19 here with the proposal you can see there. This photo is taken in front of number 20 and looking towards number 19 in the centre here with 18 there. This photo shows the side elevation of the single-storey addition there. So this photo is taken almost in between number 19 with the single-storey element here on the left-hand side and number 20 here on the right-hand side. The approximate distance to the shared boundary is around 3 metres. My final two photos are of the garden in number 19. So this is looking to the south. You'll see the conifer trees here at the rear. Oh. And this one is to the north, where you can see the garage and the concrete base. Just to pick up on a few items raised, in terms of the flood risk assessment, it's a flood zone area 1, and it's less than a hectare. So the NPPF does not require a flood risk assessment in this instance. In terms of the trees, the tree officer has no comment to make in this application. Thank you for your time, and happy to take any further questions, or please let me know if you'd like me to go back to another slide.
Thank you, Eleanor. I will now open it up to the committee for discussion. And if you don't mind, I'll reverse the order that I normally ask and start with Councillor Warnes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's a bit of background noise coming from somebody. Okay, yeah, I've read through the papers, read through the objections. My major concern was around the diametric opposing views on flooding, and they appeared to centre around whether or not a flood risk assessment should have been carried out. And Eleanor seemed to have answered that by saying, according to the NPPF, flood zone area 1 does not require a flood risk assessment. So having heard that explanation, I don't have any further questions to ask.
Thank you. Councillor Oxford, please.
Nothing to ask at this time, thank you, because the Martins just raised the point I was going to.
Thank you. Councillor McLean, please.
I have no questions, thank you.
Councillor Loveland, please.
Thank you, Chair. To me, the actual building looks totally overbuilt. You know, we've had this before, only a few weeks ago. They just seem to be going further and further. And I know it was passed originally in 1917 or 2017, but, you know, why are we getting these sort of things? To me, it looks, you know, well, obscene, really. I'll leave it there for now, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, please.
Yeah, my first impressions from these photographs, it looks overdeveloped to me for that particular area. It's a pity we don't have a site visit, which actually helps you get a perspective around there. But in terms of the balcony, you cannot superimpose that at all in any way to how that would look with a balcony? That's, it was at 1.8 meters, am I right, of the height of the balcony? No answer.
Eleanor, are you able to answer Councillor Jarvis's question?
No.
Sorry, I was on mute and I had to stop sharing the screen to become unmuted. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So yes, there is Pilkington glazing. So that's to a standard of level 4. So that's the frosted glazing, and that's 1.8 meters along the side and the rear.
Is it height you're talking about?
Yes, height.
So I was going to say you don't have a slide that can show that superimposed and the finished job, how it would look.
I'm afraid I don't. I apologise.
Because, I mean, I think with that on top of it, to me, it is looking very much overdeveloped. So that's my questions at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hazel, please.
Thank you, Chair. My questions are again overdevelopment. To me, it is not it's not attractive, and it does fall outside DP1, UR2, DP13 and DP20. What interests me, Mr. Pomeroy says, well, it's just one brick plant. But I did ask, I think yesterday, the accumulative, the actual, when you add these dimensions, as Eleanor mentioned, I think it was 20 centimetres one way, 15 the other. What is the overall extra size of that balcony? Because I may have completely made the wrong calculations, but I made it that balcony is about almost 10 feet square larger than original. Now that to me, if it's so, is rather large indeed. So I would ask that question. But also, I'm extremely concerned about the height of that balcony and the size of that balcony. We have no idea how big the back garden is or what impact that would have on the other properties. But certainly number 18 appears to be horrendously compromised were this to go ahead. So at the moment, I'm not happy with it, but I would ask for those question on the extra overall size of that development, please. Thank you.
Eleanor, would you like to address that particular question?
Yes, I'll try. I can try and get the slides up again. But approximately when you're looking at the floor plan, if I try and get my screen up again. So hopefully you can see this. So this is an increase of around 15 centimetres. This is around 40 centimetres, going clockwise here. This is 19 centimetres, and that is around 20 centimetres increase. Oh, sorry, I'll try and stop sharing again.
And the cumulative effect of that is, which is I think what Councillor Hazel was asking.
Yes, I'm trying to just open it now. Sorry, bear with me. Whilst I'm trying to open up that plan, I'll just go in terms of the balcony height. So along the side and rear, it is 1.8 meters, as I said previously, but that is to ensure that there's no overlooking to the neighbouring property to the south, number 20. So those heights were the same as the approved. If you just bear with me in terms of the sizes, my document isn't opening, but I'll keep working at it and maybe come back to that one if I can. But happy to move on to any questions, just so that I'm not wasting.
All right, well, I
time.
tell you what, then I'll move on and ask the other councillors and then come back to you at the end.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Chua, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make this statement that I've never liked retrospective applications because it causes unease, with neighbors and, for us as well. And what I was going to ask has been asked by Councillor Hazel, so I have nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it does seem huge. Gosh, there's a lot of background noise this evening. Does seem hugely disproportionate to the rest of the street, I do have to say. And like Councillor Chua, I don't like retrospective planning applications. But having said that, and it's obviously unpopular with residents, it is an approved scheme at the end of the day. It has been approved. I know there have been changes to it, but are they significant enough to warrant us refusing this evening? That's one question, really. Have we got any grounds to refuse it? Any material planning grounds that would stand up at appeal? I've still got issues about the drainage because I did ask that yesterday. I mean, is it a fact that the soakaway has been filled in and since then that's caused additional flooding issues in the area? Or is it, as Eleanor said, that the drainage system has been passed by building regs and that's not the issue? So I must admit I'm a bit confused at the moment because there's such a lot of contradictions with this, with what residents are saying and what the planning team are saying. So as I say, a bit confused. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. For my part, I am, like other committee members, I dislike these retrospective planning applications. I have to say that obviously the motives of an applicant and indeed his or her conduct is not really a material planning consideration. So we have to tread a little bit carefully here. I would, when Eleanor has finally got herself sorted, I would actually like to ask about the trees and whether or not they're TPO'd. As regarding the flooding, well, I think that one has been answered, except that since the site is less than 1 hectare and a flood assessment is not required, presumably that now falls to be a building control matter. And I think it's only right and proper to ask what sort of controls we do have over the over that side of the development. And I think looking at the site plan, it seems to me that it is very, very overdeveloped on the site. Looking particularly at the rear, I don't know what the measurement is at the end between the rear wall of the ground floor extension and the fence at the back. It doesn't seem to be much of the curtilage of the property left. Apart from that, well, are you able to answer any of those questions, Eleanor?
Yes, so in terms of the drainage, I think you're correct in terms of the soakaway, new soakaway, that is with building regulations. I have checked with our building control team and they confirmed it was with a private company. So I don't have any further details other than it will be considered under building regulations. In terms of the trees, they are not TPO.
Can I just ask actually, as regarding the flooding, you said that the site before had been a boating lake?
I don't think I said that, sorry.
I don't know quite where I picked that one up from. Okay, fine. I will. I think it was Councillor Moore who said that actually. Okay. Right, okay. Obviously you have no knowledge of that one. All right then. Do you have any further, does anybody have any further questions on this one? Councillor Hazel, please. Unmute yourself, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Again, I'd be very interested. I'm still waiting to hear the size of this extra dimension. But I too am very concerned about the drainage side. If the site already has building regulations, then private or not, surely our planning officers have a right to see the documentation and to see the certificate, which would apparently hasn't been seen. So that is a big question mark for me, because we have no idea. We're being asked to pass something which may or may not be up to standard. And I take your point very clearly about our building control. What is, or what can our building control do? I'm very concerned that we're leaving everything to somebody else. You know, the developer says this, the builder says that, and we're just being asked to pass it. And I really would like more information on this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have further queries or questions?
Simon's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor
Simon's
Jarvis,
had his
please.
hand up a long
Oh,
time.
sorry.
Yeah.
Look, me too.
And Jackie and Brian, yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
But
okay.
Simon-
Well, I tell you what, we'll start off with Councillor Jarvis first and then move on to
I want
Councillor.
to hear what Simon's got to say.
Simon, sorry, I do beg your pardon. Did you want to comment at this point?
I'm happy to wait, Chair. If you prefer to hear Councillor Jarvis, that's absolutely
fine. Chair, I just
Please,
wanted to just focus in back again on the balcony, because as I say, the impression I get is very much of overdevelopment. But am I right in saying that the balcony is 27 square meters? That's, again, it seems a very large area given the curtilage of the property as well, and how that compares with other properties in the neighbourhood. It would seem to be, say, if you had a picture of that development with the balcony in place, it's going to be huge impact, and I think it would have a detrimental impact on neighbours as well. So that's my main area of concern, is that the balcony being added to the existing development, and 27 square meters, I think, would show to be out of keeping in the area. Am I right in saying that, Eleanor?
In terms of the balcony, so along the southern side, so adjacent to number 20, it measures 5.5 meters. So that's about 40 centimeters less than already approved, 40 centimeters more than already approved. And then along the rear, it measures 3.15 meters. That's about 20 centimeters more than already approved. I think it will be difficult to argue that the increase would be so significant it would be harmful, because we do have to remember that there is the fallback position of the already approved scheme in 2017. I appreciate the concerns. There are balconies in Shears Crescent, as already stated. So in terms of being materially out of keeping, I think officers would be of the opinion still that the balcony and the addition is in keeping for the area.
And are those other balconies of a similar height as well? One that's about 6 foot high, is that right?
It's about that, yes. There's various different balconies in Shears Crescent. I'm not sure if you saw any of my videos, which I hope were helpful, but there are a few in there.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McLean, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just one point, is there enough parking for this property in the street? Because obviously there won't be any room on the plot. And do I take it the pavement has broken up? Will this be put right after they finish the development, or is that a highways matter and nothing to do with this application in any way?
Thank you. So in terms of the parking, it remains as before and as existing. There was a garage previously, as shown in my photos, but that was undersized in terms of our policies and therefore isn't a loss of policy compliant car parking. There still remains car parking on the drive. I appreciate that concerns have been raised in terms of parking along the highway, but there aren't any double yellow lines, so this is legal. It's quite difficult for us to enforce the matter because obviously we aren't doing anything wrong in terms of the law. The pavement, I'm not aware of it being broken up, but that would be a highways matter. It would fall outside the planning remit because it wouldn't be included in the red or blue line. So that would be for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Hicks raised one or two interesting points, including the business about the hard standing, removal of 150 tons of earth. Now, I appreciate that's more of a building control matter, but it's clearly something that is of concern to residents. I feel that a lot of this is actually building control, and this is something that is outside our control and our remit, which is somewhat unfortunate, as indeed is the flooding risk as well. Simon, would you like to come in at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think Eleanor had an image of the footprint of the approved scheme shown in comparison with the scheme as constructed. And I think that's probably the most useful illustration for members by reason of comparison between the extant permission and that as built. And I think it should help to clarify for Councillor Hazel the relative dimensions. As you can see, the black lines of the walls are as per the previous approval, and the red line is as per built. So in terms of the issue of the degree of overdevelopment between the approved scheme and this scheme, as you'll see, it is well, it certainly appears to me to be very minor when you look at that drawing. In terms of Councillor Jarvis's point around the balcony, if we refer back to the image, the photograph, I think it'd be helpful to clarify for Councillor Jarvis that that photograph shows the balcony built, albeit not with the balustrade. So that isn't going to have a further extension on it. That is the balcony extension as built. The balustrade is not there yet, but it does show the extent of the balcony on the side of the property. In terms of the building control issues, Mr. Chairman, you're quite right. They are building control matters. They are outside the remit of planning. In this instance, an approved building control inspector is dealing with the building control certification, and that is outside the realm of this committee in terms of matters of construction. But in terms of the flood risk, as Alan has described, this is flood zone 1. It's the lowest category of flood risk, and we would never normally have a flood risk assessment for a domestic extension of this type. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? It seems to me that oh, sorry, Gerard. Councillor Oxford, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with this application, but the issue is that tonight we're discussing the difference between the approved scheme from 2017 that we can't change and the element that has been built differently to the approved scheme. I think I've got that right. Yeah. 2 points that worry me is I had to resort to my phone to work out what 60 centimetres was, and to me it's nearly 16 inches in English and in old money. That's quite a difference. I mean, I'm wondering if the builder knows what a tape measure is for. the other thing that bothers, sorry, but the other thing that bothers me is, did our building control, do we know if they checked visually and saw the soakaway element before it was filled over? Because when people do retrospective and they don't build to plan, always makes me worrying about what else they might do. Sorry, I'm just cynical like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Eleanor, would you like to
Yeah, so
address those questions?
So I do work in centimetres and metres, but the largest increase is 40 centimetres rather than 60. And back to the building control issue, I'm afraid I have no details whether our building control team saw the soakaway or not. I just had the message that it was with a private company and that they would be receiving a certificate of completion when the building regs was passed. I don't have any further information than that, I'm afraid. That's all I can provide right now, sorry.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any more questions or queries? It seems to me, oh, sorry, Councillor Barton, please.
Yes, just one observation, really. I mean, all the things that I've got concerns about, the drainage, etc., the flooding, it appears they fall outside the remit of this committee, which leaves us just to consider the actual difference in size of what's happened. So it's a bit disappointing, really, because I think we're a bit stuck. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. No, I wholeheartedly agree, actually. This is a difficult one for us. And sorry, Eleanor, please. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I appreciate that the flooding issue is really difficult for members, but as Simon said, we wouldn't expect, nor would our lead local flood authority request a flood risk assessment on this site, and it falls outside the remit. I thought it might also be worth mentioning that we have had quite a lot of rain recently, and there is excess surface water across most of the borough. So while I appreciate that it's probably wetter than normal, we wouldn't be within our remit and the NPPF to request one.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any further comments, queries? Right, I think, I mean, it seems to me, I mean, this is, like everyone else, I'm rather dissatisfied with this one. I think it leaves a lot to be desired. However, we are rather constrained in what we can do. We must view or consider the planning application as it is before us. And I therefore propose that we accept the officer's recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Warnes, thank you. I suggest then we move to the vote. Would you, Jan, would you care to read out the names? The motion is that we do actually accept the officer's recommendation as set out in the report. Jan, please.
So that's fine. So I'll call the names out for the proposal to accept. So Councillor Barton.
4, thank you.
Councillor Chua.
Difficult decision, but 4.
4. Councillor Hazel.
Against.
Against. Councillor Jarvis.
Against.
Councillor Loveland.
Against.
Against. Councillor McLean.
4.
4. Councillor Oxford.
Hating it, but 4.
Councillor Warnes.
4.
Councillor Liddy.
Reluctantly 4.
4. That's 6-4 chair and 3 against, so that's carried.
Thank you very much. And I think that was the only item on the agenda this evening. If you can, and I thank everybody. And I think you can now switch off the YouTube, please.
I will do indeed.